Hello, legends, and welcome to Blunt Force Healing Podcast, episode 228. This means that we are on day 228 since this podcast started, and not only the podcast, but the blog that actually underpins this podcast. And you can get a little bit of history. How did I configure that blog podcast relationship for Blunt Force Healing? But I told quite a lot about it in a previous episode, which was yesterday. If you want to hear that, you can go to the episode 227 from yesterday, or just go to the blog and read a little bit about it. I remind a bit about it from time to time because I think it's important why this blog and podcast started. Today's blog post that I published is about the calm before the storm, and it's a common occurrence in my life, I would say, since that blogging or journaling started. And I call days like tomorrow stormy days. Why stormy? Mainly because they feel like a storm. Everything can happen. Usually I have a fair good idea of what I'm going to do or what I plan to do, but the fact that I drive on those days to Dublin, sometimes they are days at work, sometimes they are days with the family for other reasons, but anytime the storm days happen is when we have to drive in and out of Dublin. And that means that it's a 3 hours two-way trip, which means that at least 6 to 7 hours we spend in the car. That leaves not much time for schedule during the day. And if I'm at work, I obviously very often have a lot of meetings, so I need to plan well if I want to fulfill my requirements for this blog and podcast. And this means that I can at least describe to you how I tackle those challenges, because if I write every day at home, it's a bit easier. I have a full schedule. I don't drive much, so I can plan much better. I have much more space and time to rearrange things and even do something a bit later. But two things make it more risky or difficult tomorrow. First one is obviously I'll be getting up early, driving to Dublin. Then I have a full schedule of meetings with a couple of gaps which I need to use to my advantage. Then I have a little event later on until about 8 p.m. And then obviously another 3 hours also driving to Donegal. This means that there's very little space for writing. And from experience on those 228 days, writing from scratch any of the recent blog posts was about between 30 to 60 minutes. And I count everything, including making sure that all the tags of the post and categories are marked, that I provide the short form or excerpt for the blog post, that I put the images there and place featured image, and everything just looks well when published and is uniform across all the posts that I do. So that's about an hour, and sometimes it's very hard to plan for an hour of writing, and then you have to record like this one. It's quite unusual because I record second video episode in a row, which is also at the same time an audio that I record for the podcast. So it's actually a fun thing to do, and I hope it feels more genuine and authentic when you can see me or you can watch me while I talk, for those who don't like just podcasts but want to see it on YouTube. And we'll see how it goes. Any feedback appreciated. Obviously you can comment under the video, or you can provide feedback in any other form on the social media that you can get the links from the top of recent posts. So how do I tackle this? The increased risk for tomorrow is that 3 days ago I committed to publish the blog post before 8 p.m. It is risky and challenging because I got used to writing and recording at the same time, and it was usually in late hours. So closer to, I would say, 10, 11 p.m. I was doing those things. And there were a couple of reasons for that, because my family was already kind of getting to bed. The house was less noisy, I would say. It was just better for recording. No chores left or anything like that. It is much harder now as I do it during the day, because I need to squeeze it in between the scheduled tasks or chores. So tomorrow I must find a place to do that. And how I approach it is basically the first thing to succeed with anything that you want to plan and execute on is to know what to expect. And obviously it's very hard because life gets in the way and different things happen, but as long as you know that something is going to happen, it doesn't have to be in details, but you might mitigate the risk of failing your commitments or routines. And this is what I'm doing. So I always make sure that I have 1 to 3 core priorities for a particular day. And regardless of what happens or how many meetings, tasks I have during that day, everything else might slip or might be not executed, but those 3 things at most. I don't think expanding that 3 to more is viable. Even a 3 is quite hard to execute on, especially if they are demanding tasks. So it's better to start with just 1. And in my case, I have actually 2. So first one is to publish the post before 8 p.m. and I focus completely on that. So of course I have a lot of important meetings and schedule for tomorrow, but I need to facilitate that post, and this is my priority. So my head will be, from the very morning when I wake up, will be focused on getting this done. And obviously I will lock time in the calendar, probably around lunchtime to make it happen. But if there's any chance to do it earlier, I will use the advantage and execute on that earlier. It's especially useful if you have 2 or 3 core tasks or core priorities set for the day, because if you execute on any of them earlier, then you're ahead of everything, and it's quite obvious that you have more wiggle room and more time to spare for the other task or 2. And once I do it, that's the first core task that needs to happen before 8 p.m. And the second core task that I cannot skip is obviously to record this one, which is the audio recording for the podcast, and maybe a third in a row video update for YouTube. Not sure about that yet. It might happen in the car. I don't know how much time I will have. This one is a bit lighter on execution because I don't need to use my hands. I don't need to write it and prepare for this and publish it specifically with certain attributes. I just need to record it and publish it. So it's a bit easier to do, especially after the blog post is recorded or published. So hopefully it will be much easier. And I might even record it in the car, because why not? It will be a bit of variety here in terms of video updates. And I used to record some audio in the car for the podcast before, so once I find a quiet place, it's quite convenient to do that in the car. So yes, this is what this blog post is about. As you can probably hear, there's a bit of noise in the background, and apologies for that. Unfortunately, that's the consequence of recording anything during the day hours when the family is doing their own things around the house. Someday I might get the dedicated room with some isolation stuff and proper microphone to record it without the noise. But for now you get a genuine, authentic, but also sometimes a bit noisy material or content from my side. So I will be wrapping that up because I still have a couple of things to do before I set myself for very early tomorrow morning drive to Dublin. I still have to prepare Julian's bike to make sure that he has some means to get to school, and also I need to get to gas station and make sure that I refill the car and top up the air pressure in the tires to make sure that it's not only safe while driving, but also it's more economic when everything is aligned properly according to the guidelines from the vendor. So yeah, we'll be doing that tomorrow. Yeah, you could hear my wife, so apologies for that. I won't be editing it. It's a nice blooper. Yeah, Mache is my name, if you heard that. Let me wrap this up. I still have 2 things to do, at least, and probably more. If she's calling me out, that means that there's probably more chores to do. So thank you very much for coming. It is a shorter episode than usual. It's 15 minutes mark that we're reaching now, but still it's 15 minutes of your time, and your time is precious. I know that you could be spending that on doing something else, maybe watching something more entertaining or doing something useful, but I hope that listening to my, I would say, challenges that I'm learning from, and hoping to deliver a little bit of my experience to others helps at least one soul ever. So the YouTube channel is open for everyone. I hope you get something out of it. There will be more content that is more structured and more focused about on our kind of security all over the internet, because that's my area of so-called expertise. I see a lot of people getting accounts stolen in different social media, and a lot of identity theft that is then used against people, or actually to benefits of some bad players out there, and it can destroy people's lives. So I want to make sure that you guys, listeners and readers, get some value out of my experience and might protect yourself a bit better without looking for somebody to pay to, or waiting for that bad day to happen and then doing anything post-mortem. There are a couple of things that you can do over the internet to be safer. Obviously you are never 100% safer, but I will be producing a lot of content around cybersecurity and information security in general, so you guys are protected better. It might sound slightly boring or unnecessary for some, but if you just research a couple of times the Google, and you'll see how many breaches of the logins and passwords happen every day, and they are just being sold over the internet on the dark net, then you might reconsider. Okay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate your presence and your time spent on listening to that, and stay tuned for tomorrow. I will certainly be coming live. Oh, and if you're on TikTok, there's a link to my social channels on every blog post. You can try and tune in on TikTok, because I'm always doing TikTok lives while I drive, so it will be fun way to connect. Via TikTok, you can comment, we can talk. Well, I can respond to that while driving. Don't worry, I'm driving safe, fairly safe, so there's no danger there. But yeah, that's a nice thing to connect live. All right, thank you very much for coming. Stay tuned and see you tomorrow.